Hello, this is Little Green Ghouls, and welcome to Fear Street Explored, where your worst nightmares live. This week, I'm excited to visit The Overnight. This book has been my favorite so far. Stine really crafts some tense and unsettling scenes out in the woods of Fear Island. It moves at a nice pace, and I didn't feel the padding I felt in the other two books. The characters do make some baffling decisions near the book's climax, but I can forgive it. It does contain a near sexual assault, so if that's something you're not ready to hear about, maybe skip this video. But I definitely think this book is worth checking out. I really like this 1989 cover, mostly because it gives us an actual look at her characters, including my new favorite, Sookie Thomas, who you'll see is Stine's take on a punk rock bad girl. It just sets a nice tone for the book, which is a whole lot of creeping around in the woods. Our front take says, they shared her terrible secret, but could they get away with murder? Which is a solid hint at the plot of this story. The back take says, Nightmare Island. And I have to agree, Stine lays out some fun lore around Fear Island in this book, but let's check out the full blurb on the back. Nothing bad will happen, Della O'Connor assures her friends in the Outdoors Club. So what if their advisor can't go on the overnight to Fear Island? Won't it be more fun with no adults around? But it's no fun at all when Della gets lost in the woods and a dangerous stranger appears, whispering threats, driving her to a violent act. Suddenly, all of her friends are involved, prisoners in a conspiracy of silence, trying to conceal the terrible truth. But someone saw what Della did, and he's threatening them all, forcing them back to Fear Island to find the evidence they forgot to bury. Okay, let's start this summary. The book opens with an introduction to Della O'Connor, and not a prologue this time. Della is busy stewing on some self-induced relationship drama. She broke up with her boyfriend Gary in the heat of an argument, but didn't think the breakup would stick, and that he would come crawling back to her, begging for forgiveness. But nope, now she's missed prom, and he hasn't even attempted to call her. Della is a member of the Outdoors Club and is looking forward to the upcoming overnight camping trip because she thinks this will be her shot at getting to chat with Gary one-on-one so she can apologize for her behavior. Della also casually mentions that Sookie Thomas will be on the overnight too, and I'm excited for this because in our previous book, Sookie was described as a punk rock shoplifting bad girl who likes to sleep around, complete with spiky platinum blonde hair and various piercings, so she's obviously going to be the best character in the series. Della's already worried that Sookie is coming for her man, so bring on the teen drama. We're then introduced to Della's best friend, Maya Franklin, who Stine lovingly describes as looking like little orphan Annie with a boyish figure, which is a departure from looking like Cher, Molly Ringwald, and Daryl Hannah, like our previous best friend side characters. Although Maya's parents do worry about her acting like a rabbit in heat on this overnight trip, so she must have something going on for her. Della enters the club classroom and is dismayed to see Gary's flirting with Sookie and laments that Sookie has quite a reputation. So, fetch the smelling salts. Sookie is currently wearing a shredded black sweater, very short black leather skirt, with dark purple tights and matching lipstick, further reinforcing that Sookie is awesome. A boy named Peter Goodwin sits with Della, and right from the get-go, you can tell this boy's into her, but she thinks he's just a little too preppy for her. Stine continues with the assault of characters to keep track of, and Ricky Shore walks in. Ricky's apparently a short wannabe class clown that no one actually thinks is funny and is known just to be obnoxious. This guy is clearly going to be Stine's favorite. We know the man can't pass up an opportunity to insert unfunny jokes. Their Outdoors Club advisor, Mr. Abner, finally shows up and announces they have to cancel the overnight trip due to a personal emergency. But fear not, once Mr. Abner walks away, Sookie suggests they go anyways without any sort of adult supervision. We all know what that means, debauchery. It's then settled, Della, Maya, Gary, Sookie, Peter, and Ricky will all be sneaking off for an unsupervised overnight camping trip to Fear Island this upcoming Saturday. What could possibly go wrong? Later, Della's mom gives us some background on Fear Island as she tries to process why the hell anyone would want to camp there. But Fear Island, there's been such awful stories. Her mother straightened some books on a shelf and then fluffed the pillow on Della's bed. Fear Island was a small, uninhabited island covered in pine trees in the center of the lake behind the Fear Street woods. Even though it was a perfect spot for picnics and camping, and only a few minutes boat ride away across the lake, few people ventured there because of the dreadful stories about it. Some said that strange animal mutations, hideous, dangerous creatures that didn't exist anywhere else roamed the woods. Others said the island was infected with poisonous snakes. And there were stories that the island had been used long ago as an Indian burial ground, and that the ghosts walked the woods at night, seeking their revenge for their fate. Pete shows up to give Della a ride to the lake, and once again he's very into her, but she thinks he's so perfect looking that it's off-putting. At the lake, everyone was there and waiting, so they load up the canoes and start to paddle to Fear Island. Della is annoyed that Sookie is still in hot pursuit of Gary, and judges Sookie's camping outfit, which consists of metal-studded jeans, a Guns N' Roses t-shirt, and long purple press-on nails. Also, Every line Ricky speaks is in fact a terrible Stine joke, but I'm sparing you all from them because it would add 10 minutes to the video. On Fear Island, they set up a boys' tent and a girls' tent, and then get to hunting for firewood. Della thinks this is the perfect time to talk to Gary, but she's too late and awkwardly stumbles across Gary and Sookie engaged in a full-on makeout session in the woods. The next chapter opens with, "No one was surprised later that afternoon when Ricky pulled a gun from his pack. Come on guys, everyone take one." He then pulled out 5 more pistols, one at a time. "Great, let's do it," Pete cried enthusiastically. Okay, Gary was just as gung-ho. He grabbed a gun from Ricky and pretended to fire it at Pete. Pete hit the ground and pretended to retaliate with his own gun. The 3 girls groaned in unison. And for a brief second, I was like, what the hell is going on in this forest? But it turns out these are all just Zap paintball guns. They then divide into boys versus girls for a paintball war, which is always the lamest way to split things up. These paint guns are ones I'm unfamiliar with because I guess they shoot streams of paint versus getting pelted by actual paintballs. Della is not pleased to be teamed with Sookie, but Sookie doesn't care about Della and thinks this paintball game is sexy because she likes hunting and being hunted. You do you, Sookie. The girls then all make the terrible decision to split up, but not before Sookie stares Della down and comments that Gary is really nice and reminds Della that they're broken up now. Sookie does not give a fuck. Della has a brief shootout with Ricky before racing further into the woods and getting solidly lost. This goes on for a few pages until she comes across a handsome stranger in the woods wearing a necklace with creepy silver skulls on it. She flirts with this man, even though there is something obviously unsettling about the whole situation, but I seem to be more concerned than Della is, even after the conversation weirdly steers towards reproduction. Eventually, the flirting stops, and this man gets aggressive. He starts grabbing at her sweater and earrings and complimenting them, but when Della turns to walk away, he yanks her back by her hair. He then pins her to a tree and starts to take off his jacket, and it becomes clear this is about to become a full-on RAPE scene, which I did not anticipate Stine including in these books at all. Thankfully, Della is able to spray the man with paint in the face and break free of his grasp. She ends up on top of a ravine where he catches her again, but Della knocks him off balance and shoves his evil ass right off the edge, and it's like, good, kill the bastard. Della is horrified to see that he's snapped his neck and slides down the ravine to confirm that he's actually dead by checking his pulse, and he is. She moves his arms up and down, but they just flop lifelessly onto the ground. Della decides she doesn't want to ruin her life with a police investigation over this asshole and starts burying him with leaves, with the plan being that she'll just return to camp like nothing happened. However, while piling leaves up on his corpse, she looks up and spots Ricky and Maya watching from the edge of the ravine. The next chapter opens with all the teens discussing what to do with the body, and they end up agreeing just to burying it in leaves and telling no one. Maya wants to leave the island, but eventually is persuaded to stay because if they head home early, it will just lead to more questions from all their parents. That night, they all gather around the fire and eventually all hold hands and take an oath to never tell anyone about what happened on Fear Island. Della wakes up in the middle of the night to sounds of footsteps creeping outside of the tent. When she wakes Sookie and Maya, they refuse to investigate with her, so for some reason, Della wanders out of the tent with a flashlight solo to find the source of the noise. I would never. She doesn't see anything, but thinks maybe someone was messing with their backpacks by the fire and tries to convince herself it was probably just a raccoon searching for food. The next morning, they wake up at the first signs of dawn, eager to escape Fear Island, but are horrified to discover that someone has taken the canoes, so now they're stranded. Gary tries to reassure everyone that when they don't come back today, someone will come looking for them, but Maya still is panicked because then all their parents will know they went camping without a teacher. I loved the idea of them being trapped on this island, but sadly, Ricky reveals that he hid the canoes during the paintball game yesterday and forgot to put them back. You know, after Della killed that guy. So they're all able to paddle back to Shadyside without further event. Once at home, Della heads straight to bed without telling her mom anything. She then has to attempt to comfort Maya over the phone because she doesn't think she'll be able to keep this secret. Before leaving for Maya's house, Della tries to grab her wallet, but realizes it's not in her backpack where she left it. We spend a few pages calming Maya down, and when Della returns home, she finds an envelope on the front door. When she lifts it up, one of the silver skulls from the Predator's necklace falls out, and the note reads, "I saw what you did." So, this is very much I Know What You Did Last Summer, which I guess was a book from 1973 first. We then jump to 2 days later, and Della's gathered everyone up, minus Pete, for a meeting about this threatening note. Honestly, at this point, I'd just tell the cops. During this meeting, Gary reveals he also received a silver skull in his mailbox, but no note. They all learn only Gary and Della have had their wallets taken, and think maybe that's why they're being targeted, because this person has their addresses and not the others. Gary still wants to go to the police, but Sookie argues if this person actually wanted to get them in trouble, they would have already notified the police and reported the body. Instead, they're just trying to scare them, so Sookie thinks if they all remain calm, this person will get bored and stop. I feel like that's just going to cause this mystery person to escalate the situation because we have like half a book to go. There is then a knock at the door and Della answers it thinking it's Pete, but is surprised to find no one there. It then occurs to her this could be the mystery person fucking with them, so she quickly locks all the doors in the house and is once again startled by a knock with no one there. The teens are all freaked out now and Maya's begging to go home, but Gary has a plan. He wants to wait with a Polaroid, so the moment the next knock happens, Della can fling the door open and he can take a picture to show the police. When the next knock happens, they spring into action and catch a glimpse of this man fleeing into the darkness, but the photo is too blurry to figure out who it is. They're then startled by another knock, but this time it's actually Pete, who's finally made it over for the meeting. Pete shows them all a page from the Shadyside Beacon that reads, "Neighbors witness burglary, fatal shooting, and police hunt for 2 men in killing," complete with a witness sketch of one of the killers, who is none other than the predator that Della pushed into the ravine. They're able to piece together that these 2 burglars killed a man in a robbery gone wrong and were hiding out on Fear Island. When Della accidentally killed one of the burglars, the other partner must have been watching nearby, so now the group knows they're being stalked by a potential killer. They debate going to the police some more and worry about this man trying to blackmail their families when there is yet another knock at the door. This just ends up being Della's mom and her friend Mr. Garrison, who walked her home. I'm mentioning this man by name in case he ends up being a killer stalker. Everyone leaves having resolved nothing, but Pete stays behind and asks Della if she wants to go out on Friday night. She says yes, and then we learn there's a nightclub in Shadyside for teens called The Mill. Are these type of teen clubs real? I feel like a club catering to only teens sounds like hell on earth. We then jump to Friday night at the Mill and suffer through Della and Pete dancing their hearts out with a bunch of other teenagers until after midnight when Della can't dance any longer. She gives Pete a big old kiss and then the 2 head off for hamburgers. Romance. Except their late night meal plans get interrupted when Pete notices a car following them. The car then turns on its high beams and Della realizes it's probably the stalker. We're then launched into a high-speed car chase through the winding hills of Shadyside. Pete is trying his best to escape the car, but soon it's ramming into the back of them. Pete is able to slam on the brakes and spin the car the other way, causing the mystery car to lose control and crash. Pete and Della investigate the wreckage, but are disappointed to find no one in the car, so whoever crashed was able to crawl out and escape, even though these people were just doing 90, so you'd think his ass would be mangled. The next day at school, they're having their first real outdoors club meeting since the overnight trip on Fear Island, and their teacher Mr. Abner is thrilled to announce he's moved things around so they can all go to Fear Island this Saturday. The man is expecting some enthusiastic reactions, but instead gets subdued horror because none of these kids planned for this moment. They're able to postpone their decision until later in the week, but right after the meeting, they realize Della left one of the Zap paint guns with the body, so now they have to return to Fear Island to get it, and the official overnight trip will be a good excuse. We then hop right to Saturday morning with the teens and Mr. Abner paddling out to Fear Island. Mr. Abner is trying his best to get some excitement out of these kids, but he's met with silence as they all seemingly paddle to their doom. While paddling, Della reflects on how her feelings have changed towards Pete. She's now pretty into him and doesn't find herself getting jealous over Gary and Sookie. Once on the island, they all have to pretend like they haven't been here before. Like, wow, look at those trees. Mr. Abner wastes no time and has all these kids out on a hike before they can even set up their tents. Della and Pete plan to sneak over to the body once it becomes time to gather firewood. Meanwhile, Mr. Abner is trying his best to make this a thrilling trip by filming the kids hiking and telling them all he's going to make them each a copy so they can always remember this experience. They finally make it across the island, and Della's just like, yep, looks like the other side we were just on. The weather during this trip is much crappier, so they're all soggy from walking in the cold, misty fog. They walk back to camp along the beach and soon are off to look for firewood while Mr. Abner and Maya set up the camp. Della and Pete almost make it towards the ravine when they hear Maya screaming for help back at camp. They all race back and find Maya holding an unconscious Mr. Abner who's bleeding from the head. Maya reports that she saw a man attack Mr. Abner and then race into the woods, so their little murderer stalker followed them out here too after all. These characters then make a baffling series of decisions. Mr. Abner's head wound is bad enough that somebody needs to head back to Shadyside for help, so Gary declares he, Sookie, and Ricky will go back, even though only 2 really need to leave. This leaves Della, Maya, Pete, and an unconscious Mr. Abner on the island. Della and Pete decide they need to go get the zap gun, but Maya's like, fuck that, you can't leave me alone to get attacked. So Pete is staying behind and sending Della off into the woods on her own with a flashlight. It's almost like either Gary, Sookie, or Ricky should have stayed back too. So now we have Della wandering into the dark woods in the fog with a killer on the loose. She tries her best to remain calm as she gets closer and closer to the ravine. Soon, she spots another flashlight in the woods with her, and for some unknown reason she thinks, oh, it must be Pete, and starts calling out for him. These are some classic horror movie level stupid decisions because, shocker, it's not Pete. Della realizes the error of her ways and makes a mad dash through the woods and soon races right off the edge of the ravine in the dark and finds herself tumbling down into a pile of dead leaves where the body's at. She nearly throws up at the idea of sitting on top of a decaying body, but then it occurs to her that this pile of leaves is a little small. She searches through it and discovers that the body is no longer there, nor is the Zap paint gun. She then spots a man standing at the edge of the ravine. At first, she thinks it's the dead guy, but once he gets closer, she realizes it's not. He leaps at her in full-on attack, but she's able to crack him across the head with a heavy metal flashlight, knocking him unconscious. She examines him closer and doesn't recognize the guy, so she concludes this must have been the partner in the burglary after all. She's had enough of all this and decides to give up on the Zap paint gun and runs back towards the beach. She thinks she can hear footsteps, and once again Della makes a really dumb decision and starts shouting for Pete. Guess what? It's not Pete, it's the dead predator. Turns out he's not dead after all, and just naturally has a weak pulse, so that's why they couldn't tell he was still alive. He and his partner decided that after the teens tried to cover up what they thought was a murder, it was a prime opportunity to try blackmailing them, so the plan really was all along to terrorize these kids and eventually their parents until they handed over some money to make it all stop. The man then pulls a gun out of his jacket and holds it to Della's temple while talking crazy. In a chapter cliffhanger, he actually pulls the trigger, but it's just a Zap paint gun, so Della has yellow paint sprayed all over her. She tries to run, but he knocks her to the ground and reveals he has a real gun too. This gets interrupted though by some bright lights and the predator can no longer see. Della seizes the opportunity and sprays him in the eyes with a Zap gun and then turns to find Pete as the source of light. They race through the woods together as the crazy man chases after them half blind. When they reach the beach, Della is relieved to see Gary, Sookie, and Ricky were able to get help, because the moment the crazy man pops onto the beach, he's taken down by 3 police officers. Della lets them know that his accomplice is unconscious at the ravine, and we all live happily ever after. The book then ends with Della heading out on a date with Pete. She's told her mom everything about the overnight and its following events, so she's feeling much better about herself. Pete then jokes about taking Della camping, and she responds that she only wants to camp in front of the TV. And that's how this one ends. I've given up on final page twists, and I am now expecting these corny ass endings. Overall, I thought The Overnight was a pretty decent story. I really enjoyed how tense Stine made the scene with Della and the Predator. He did a nice job showing that this guy was no good before Della herself even realized it, and he kinda made the case for choosing the bear. The motive gets a little sloppy, as does the decision making towards the climax, but this book didn't feel like it dragged, and it kept me engaged throughout. I'm gonna give this one 4 out of 5 Zap paint guns. I came very close to giving this 5 stars, but I'm hopeful we can get something just a little bit stronger. Okay, for Fear Street deaths in The Overnight, there were none. We spent most of this book thinking Della snapped some predator's neck, but nope. This leaves our Fear Street series total at 2 deaths. In Fat 90s Moments, we only had 3. These included Guns N' Roses, Polaroids, and calling things rad. This brings our Fear Street series total to 18. For Useless Adults, the adults in this story were trying their best. The kids never confided in anyone, and Mr. Abner just had the misfortune of taking this tricky group of kids camping to his own detriment. This leaves our Fear Street series total at 2. In What's Your Favorite Scary Movie, we never get any threatening phone calls. Instead, Steiner opted for mystery knocks at the door. This leaves our Fear Street series total at 6. This week, in Romance, we had Della and Preppy Pete getting together throughout the story, despite her initial disinterest. We also had Gary and Bad Girl Sookie hooking up too. This brings our Fear Street series total to 4. On the flip side, we're going to start tallying up the unhealthy relationships present in these books. First, the new girl contained the obvious one with Corey and not Ghost Anne. Then, in the surprise party, it gave us a look at Corey and Lisa, who behaved like married boomer sitcom characters. Finally, The Overnight gave us a brief glimpse at the Gary-Della relationship, where Della is that girl who likes to break up for fun and then revel in the making up process. This gives us a Fear Street series total of 3. I'm also introducing ex drama. This will be whenever we have characters dealing with their exes, whether that be an ex dating a friend, or in the case of The Overnight, an ex dating a nemesis with Gary getting with Sookie. Shocker ending is officially dead, and we're now totaling up the cheesy endings, because so far, all 3 of these books have had one last chapter where Stine lays it on thick, and we live happily ever after without any trauma from the events of the story. This brings our Fear Street series total to 3. I also have to quickly say, I received quite a few fun suggestions for tally ideas, and I'll be adding a few more once I come across the examples of them, so look out for that. Well, that's it for The Overnight. I really enjoyed this book, but I am looking forward to Stine returning to the supernatural at some point. I kind of wanted the Predator to actually be a Fear Street ghost haunting the island, but it didn't happen. Next week is Wrong Number. This should be a banger for What's Your Favorite Scary Movie. Also, this is a cover I definitely remember seeing as a kid browsing the library. Let me know in the comments what you thought of The Overnight. Did you like the I Know What You Did Last Summer shenanigans? Would you camp on Fear Island? Is Sookie the greatest character in Fear Street? Also, what did you think of my Woodsy and Stalker horror clips? This one was the easiest so far, even if I'm not big on the I Know What You Did franchise. Anyways, as always, thanks again for watching, and make sure you subscribe for
the pride, the love,